Stephanie? Or,
I do not even remember.
you don't remember who it was? It might have been.
I really don't. That
Thank
was
you.
6 years ago.
Now this CD has, I don't do handouts. They're expensive. They usually get watered up. These get scratched up and I throw them away.
Scratch up from your adult spindles. If you're a fiber.
I lose hand, I never use those.
What you'll find on this CD is I don't rewrite pewter casting papers because there's guys out there that does a lot better job than I do. And Baron Falcone over in Anciora has an excellent paper. It's in PDF on that disc. It gives you everything from start to scratch. So if you forget something today, don't worry about it. There's 3 different papers on there. Pewter Casting 101. And that's one of the places I learned from was from his paper. And so I don't do handouts. I don't handouts because it's just like textbooks. Somebody's better writing than me, so I use their stuff. They get the credit for it. Also, there is some links on there for roto metal for pewter. Right now, it's $17 a pound, and over $50 is free shipping. This pewter is lead-free. It's the only stuff I use. I will not use anything that has lead in it. Lead is poisonous. Will a child get sick from sucking on one of the lead tokens? Probably not. But you don't know if he's been getting paint off the windowsill for the last 5 years, and so he does get sick. And they say, well, he was chewing on this lead, which this is lead right here. It's been painted. He's been chewing on this lead token, so he got lead poisoning from the castings. That's why I only use lead-free pewter. Now, this particular pewter that I use is called an R98, and you'll see that when you go to Rotor's Metal. It's the same cost as the rest of them, but this is the sweetest pouring stuff I've ever seen. This stuff here is from the same company, only with special order with special ingredients. I've got a bunch of this. I just like to chunk it for river weights. It's really tough to pour, so it makes a difference. So R98 is what you'll be looking for is pewter. The other thing is where you get your soapstone. A lot of people can go to Hobby Lobby, and they've got soapstone there. But you got to be careful when you buy that because it's got cracks in it, it's got inclusions in it, and stuff like that. And I'll show you more about that in a minute. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is give you a little history first. I don't know if everybody can see this or not. The Worcester Company of Pewter Casters started back around 1348 was the first records. So pewter casting has been around a long time. Now they use lead and tin as their pewter. It was the number 16th company and silver press precincts of over 100 other companies. So that's how active they were and how quick they become a company of their own. Their first charter was granted by Edward IV in January 1474. And the reason I tell you that is that I don't want you just to say, I'm going to make pretty things and all that. I like for you to research a little bit and figure out where it comes from. There are some beautiful molds that have been discovered that are online, that are period style. There's some in the books back there, and Brian Spencer's, back by Stephanie back there. There's all those books have different pewter cast pieces in them, and that's where most of my ideas come from. Is from that because I want to make it as period as possible, and I'll explain a little bit more of that. The touch plates, trademarks. You'll see a lot of pieces that have a little mark on the back of it, and you'll see pewter goblets that have marks on it too. And that was the way they quality control the different pewter things they made back then. And their trademarks had to be registered, and how much lead and tin and everything was in it was also based on their trademark, on the stamps too. So if you don't have a maker's mark, you need to figure your one out. And if it's not really hard, just something to help identify your stuff. Unfortunately, most of mine don't even have mine on it here. I'm too busy just making the piece. This is my trademark right here, and this is Morris, my lady's. That's hers. So if you see this on any of the bikini stuff, you know that I made it. And if you sit on some really junky stuff, let me know if somebody's counterfeiting. I'm just kidding. 19th century, the company was, no longer exercised the pewter trademarks regulations because they couldn't do it. Because there's so many companies worldwide started putting out pewter stuff that they couldn't do that, so pretty much. And in my other classes I had for everybody to work on their trademarks. And I call this from the head to stone. First of all, you got to come up with an idea. Does everybody have an idea of what they want to do today, what they want to carve today? Did everybody bring a picture of what they want to carve today? Hopefully a small one. If not, then we can figure something out. Some of my ideas come from books, as you see back there, from paintings. If you look, sometimes they've got jewelry on, sometimes they'll have badges and stuff on like that. And or other items from the past. My lady was needing some little spoons for one of her A&S displays for people to sample with. So I made her one just because she needed one. And I know pewter was period in spoons, so just a little one. That one's got a hole in it, so that wasn't very good. So, and there's my counterpart crown. So I try to keep things as close to our time period as we can, from 1600 to 16. If you want to make modern stuff, you can. I've actually had one modern, a guy come to me for some pewter that was a modern deal. I worked on it. The amount of time I put in it wasn't worth it, so I don't do that anymore. You know, they can't afford it. You can't afford $75 to $150 an hour for carving fees. And then after you start carving, you'll realize the details and stuff, it'll take a long time to do that. And that's why when I make site tokens, I don't charge labor. I charge just for the material because our groups couldn't afford the labor of actually carving. So it's a labor of love. And this is my hobby. This is my passion. So you need to put it on paper. You need to have pictures of the likeness or something. I don't know how many of you seen the coin that Marvin had in his elevation. If you didn't, this is one side of it. John McCall drew this up for him, and he sent it to me. And then I took it and I put it on a coin. The other side of the coin was this dragon, and you can see how downsized it so it would fit on that coin. And I'll even talk about one of those coins here. I do it home somewhere. The coronation oath or Kenna is done the same way. They told me what they wanted. You just pass this around. They wanted a German eagle on the front of it, and they wanted a satin, a Japanese flower on the back of it. And after discussing exactly what they wanted, they told me that was what they did, and so that's what we carved. So your ideas can come from anything. You've got a device, in particular, mine's a frog. I haven't even done any frogs yet. Some have done bees. James, the beekeeper, does little bees. He did bee buttons. So a button with a bee on it. Just use your imagination. Okay, to get it on the stone itself is you can do it freehanded using Sharpie if you're a good artist. You know, I can't draw. I can't. Mine looks like chicken scratching, but I can carve, and so I have to trace the drawing I want to do on my stone. And there's a couple of different ways that I do that. And I know I'm going really fast. So if you got a question, stop me, raise your hand, or slow down. And I may have to tell you about it. Here's one. For the coin that I did for Marvin, here's what this was the way it was. It's in reverse. You want to remember that. So whatever you want to do, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. here is, Luther wanted a special coin also for his epic challenges that he's giving. And so I sent him some stuff and he sent it back. This was a crown that's on one side of the coin. And we've got carbon paper on the back. And the way I attached the two is just with white out. I mean, it's what I had. You know, just sitting on workbench. I wonder if this will work. Yeah, it works great. So, carbon paper, you can still get it. It's at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. So that gets it on the stone, or you can use a Sharpie and draw it. I watched one lady up in Palantir Metal and Glass 2 years ago. She's an artist. And she drew what she was going to carve on the stone with a Sharpie. And then she commissioned a carbon and then it was a beautiful piece. And, but I can't do that. So, the next question is how big or how small? Well, with pewter at $17 a pound, the thicker they are, the more they weigh, you can get an ounce token really quick. Really quick. Okay, that's 17 tokens per pound. That's $1 a token. So you want to make them as, this here is probably almost a half an ounce. I don't know if y'all remember this. This is the 5th year. That's half of the token for 5th year. And the whole token complete was less than a quarter of an ounce. So they worked out to be about, if you remember, I made 500 of those. So there was 1,000 pieces, but we put them together. And it was like, I think for the total cost was like $75–80 for the pewter and the molds and all that stuff. So you want to make it as light as possible, not necessarily small. You can have big stuff. Look how thin it is.
How would you put them together?
With chain.
With what?
With chain. Just regular chain. Slipper rings. So you can make them really thin. The thinner they are, the harder they are to pull cord. And but that's the only way that a lot of the shires can afford that is to do that.
You said the thinner they are, the harder they are to pour.
The thinner they are, yes, the harder they are to pour. So you want to concentrate on the size. Soapstone is only, you buy it by whatever size you want. You can buy it bigger. This is 4x4. What we normally use is a 3x3. That was a 6x6 or an 8x8 that I got for a project that I never did. But so you can get the soapstone whatever you need. You can also put 2 pieces together. Jane Bowman done that. Put a couple of pieces together. Makes it really tough though because of the expansion and stuff. Details. That can be as plain as a simple, that can be as plain as just a simple cross. Could be plain, this is Sir Rashid, he did it in a class, just a simple hand. It has some detail, it's got his crescent right here. If you see his white belt, night belt that he wears now, he's got these all around it. He took and done that. Or it can be as detailed as you want it. Like this mermaid. You see how small that is? That was from Ragger Rock. Or this knife, which was from Diamond Wars. I could get you guys a CD good. Or did I give it to you already? Okay. So the detail is up to you, but you want to remember the more detail you have, the harder it gets to be, because soapstone has got some peculiar quirks to it. But I would suggest start out on something basic, a cross, a star, a spoon even, or whatever you've got. Here is a, this is bringing back a lot of memories. This is a pomegranate from, can't even think of her name. She wears it on her Viking boots now. Hang on a minute. 2 words, yeah. Her husband just graduated law school. Julia.
Oh, yeah.
I knew it would come eventually. She requested that, and so I made her some of those pomegranates that come around. So it's really just how much you want to get into it, how much time you want to spend in your detail. What are you going to use it for? Is it going to be a coin? Is it going to be a pen with a pen back that you can add? You can make it a period pen back or a modern pen back. Or is it just going to be a plaque with holes in it so it can be sewn on? It's all period. Or is it going to be, see, I told you I can't draw. That's what I am. Or a hole for just putting it on a string. So that's one of the things you need to think about is how and what you're going to use for that. Cliff, would you go out and get that propane bottle out of the car?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Cliff's coming to get it. I love you. Bye. Oh yeah, I was right. Boss is called. Now I'm completely off track.
We may have that.
Yes.
How malleable is the, I mean, could you do a thin strip and bend it with this?
You could. If you've been to a lot of them, right there.
Yeah.
There was, how many of you seen the golf ball rings?
To what?
Oh, yeah.
The rings that were sight tokens for golf balls.
Yeah.
This is one of them right here. I only got one. I'll just pass that around. They did, Paul Lutho did rings for sight tokens for golf course. The idea was great, but they were a nightmare for people wearing them because Walmart had a ton of them in a little box because people would lose them. They'd sling off really easy.
Yep.
The reason I still have that one is I never wore it. I left it above my truck the whole time. So. But yes, you could. Now there is a pewter, and you have to get with me later, that Roto Metal makes that has got a more malleable type to it. And it's harder to pour, but it's easier to beat with a hammer. So let's talk about soapstone. Hi guys.
Early or late?
You're late. That's all right. Let's talk about soapstone. Soapstone is, just as the name implies, it feels like soap. If you never felt it, but that's what different than is. It feels like soap.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Does everybody know my partner in crime? Miss Lee? This is the Lordship Ben. He's an artist in his own right. He took my class, and then he's made some beautiful things out of it, not because of my class, because he is an artist. He can draw freehanded and do things like that. The TOC tokens that we had, I gave him an idea of basically what I wanted, and I had one out here, I thought. Anyway, I gave him a basic idea of what I wanted, and he took it and ran with it to come up with some beautiful tokens. And he's made a few others. He's got one somewhere, or should have. But anyway, he's my partner in crime. He'll help you when we get the carbon part of it. If you have any questions or anything like that, I have all kinds in the world that he can help you. Excuse me, Grant. Yes, baby. Yes, they will. Yeah, I'll take it there. Probably not. All right. Love you. All right. Now, so you see soapstone has got a soapy feel to it. That is because it is made out of magnesium, dolomite, chloride, and talc. hole could be 300 to 400 million years old. It's just the way it is. It's poured like granite marble, and of course it has that soap filling when you rub it. Not all the soapstone. It's easy to carve. It's resistant to heat, and it retains detail pretty good. After you can pull the details out of it after so many casts. It's like the 500 I did of the ram's head, the 500 I did of the V. It didn't make any difference. So I'm thinking you can probably get up to 1,000 depending on the detail and exactly how it was carved. Now, not all soapstones are the same. You have to avoid some of them because somebody says, well, I got a piece of soapstone I'll give you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. The guy gave me a piece of soapstone. He said, here, you can have this soapstone. This stuff is hard as marble.
Hard to rock.
You can't carve it. You can see where I've tried scratching it. Because they make countertops and they make fireplace harps out of this stuff. And so there's different grades of it. There's some that have, you have to look to see what you buy at Hobby Lobby will have cracks in it a lot of times. You'll see veins in it and stuff like that. You want to try to avoid those if you can. The other thing that I was talking about soapstone, if you're carving detail, there will be an inclusion, a little piece of iron, a little piece of metal in it. And that's what I was looking at yours, thinking that there's a lot in this one here. As you can see this here, with all the little black specks, I guarantee you those little black specks are iron and you cannot carve them. You have to carve around them, or you can dig it out and they'll leave a hole. So it really makes it tough if you're doing really fine detail work. So you want to get a piece as clean as you can. It's, yeah, for what you have, that may work, but if you want, like I said, get those two there, it'd be a lot better, especially for an AMH project. Because I guarantee you it's going to pop up right where you want that little bitty detail, that little bitty thing that just makes that token pop. There's going to be an intrusion there or a crack or something that'll get you, so look it over.
Fred, I noticed that this piece doesn't feel quite the same as the first piece you passed around. So can you tell kind of the differences by the way they feel sometimes, or is it?
If you can, scratch a corner of it, scratch the edge of it. Then you don't scratch that. I mean, I took a regular, with soapstone, you can take your finger in and scratch it.
A good piece with really tacky, you can scratch it with your finger.
It is, you know?
No, this feels like concrete. Though.
Well, it's not though, it's soapstone.
Yeah. No.
But they make countertops out of it. And so once they're polished, they don't scratch, you know? So you have to be careful about what you get, especially if you buy it off the eBay. On that disc, there's a link, it's called Stoneman Distribution. He's out of Canada up there. When you send him an email, tell him that you want it to Pewter Casting. And he will send you some of the best blocks he can. You know, not all of them are good. I've got some bad from him. But that's what he sells, and it's the cheapest I've found as far as 3x3 blocks. You know, that's the way you get it. And you have to cut it. So I'm going to get to experience that better. Common names. African wonderstone is the hardest. It's a soapstone, but it's the best. It doesn't have all these little intrusions. It doesn't have the veins. It is harder to carve, but it is carvable.
What is this now?
African wonderstone. It is a lot more expensive. And most of the time when you buy it, it comes in huge chunks. It doesn't come, you know. When I bought this from the guy, and I bought it, the guy bought it from me. I told him what sizes I wanted. I've got some that's that thick. I've got some that's long. I've got some that's short, you know. And so I've got to cut them all out. And I can cut them. I use my metal bandsaw to cut these. But they hold detail like you wouldn't believe. Osprey has done some stuff. The roadshow tokens, if you got any of those, or if you haven't got them, she's done the roadshow tokens. That stuff holds detail just unreal. I mean, you can pour, I don't know how many casts you can pour off that stuff, but it's just unreal how well the detail holds. Feels a little different, feels a little heavier, but you know, it's just,
once you have reached your limit on the definition that you can get out of the mold, are you able to shave it down and make another
You bet.
impression?
You bet. Real quick, some other things that you can cast in. If you can find it. This stuff here is called Colby. Colby, it's a volcanic ash. T-O-L-P-I-A or something like that. It's also carvable.
Wow.
I don't know where to find it.
Like pumice.
I just had a guy that had some and he had carved it in there. The other thing is plaster of Paris.
How do you guys use a plaster of Paris?
It just depends. What happens with plaster of Paris is it usually the heat will destroy it before you actually. The other thing is cuttlefish. Cuttlefish is only good for maybe 1 or 2, 3 or 4 casts. And plus, you're going to get the outline of the cuttlefish. Cuttlefish, you find it at pet stores. That's what the birds eat on, parakeets and stuff. The thing about cuttlefish, if you just happen to have a button, and the reason I'm telling you this is, if you just happen to have a button that you lost and you want to make one real quick, you can go buy cuttlefish. You make it smooth like you do the soapstones, but then you can take, I don't know if this one here is old, I don't know if I can do this in there. And all I do is mash it in. So you need to reproduce that one button that you lost.
2 buttons.
2 buttons. This is Ocean Chemicals fish, by the way. Then, if you look and see. So if you're in an event, you're all dressed up, and you lose a button, you just got to have it, run out and get your pewter out, find your piece of toast, slap it together, heat a fire up, pour your button, put it back on, and make quarter time. I mean, you can do that.
We always carry our pewter.
We always carry our pewter, yeah. So that's some of the options that you have. As you can see, 90% of the stuff that I do is out of soapstone. Cuttlefish has got a bad smell to it when you pour hot metal into it. It's fish. If everybody got to look at the tokens and stuff up here on the table, not all these are mine. Okay? And some of them are modern reproductions, or some of them are modern productions. But not all these are mine. This particular token here was from Baroness Kiera that they did at a crack angle or an MSKD. I don't remember. This here is just an aluminum slug that was done with the cracked angle stamped on it. For those that small grade wear, this is the bear paw. We did it just for their regalia. This is a money bag that was done for Diamond Wars. This here, and I can't think of her name, she wasn't here very long, she moved out of Kingdom, she's in Arizona now. She did this for lilies, she was nasty credit lilies, and so she did this little pen, and the paint that she used on it is a low temp enamel that will work, that will last on these, and that's a whole different class in itself. But I bring everybody that I have. This was the first token that I ever commissioned, that I commissioned, because this was MSKD, the first one that I ever autocrated. It's made out of lead painted. Little did I know then. The pour blanks to stamp coins with. It's a whole different class, but it's all out of pewter. It's all lead free. So a lot of this here, you recognize that?
Yeah. Do you have one that's full?
So not all this is mine. If you have any questions about a piece, just let me know, and I can pretty much tell you who did it. It's just stuff that I really, and yes, there's some Monopoly pieces in there too, because I think they're cool.
There's some what pieces in that?
Monopoly pieces. So, anyway, that's where we're at as far as the soapstone goes. And I have a limited number of soapstone blocks, and if everybody wants soapstone, it means somebody's gonna get to cut soapstone. We do that outside. No, it's not carving time yet. Let's do the safety precautions now. Number one, soapstone makes a really fine powder. When you carve it, when you sand it, when you cut it, that powder is really bad for you. Over a period of time, it causes some lung disease, and if you constantly inhale it. So when we go out to cut these, I have masks up here that if anybody wants a mask, they're welcome to it. Some people carve soapstone underwater. I've tried it, doesn't work for me. When I am carving out a big section for a token or something, then a lot of times I'll wet that soapstone because I'm not carving detail, I'm just carving out a hollow for my detail. And then when I'm done, I'll let it dry and then I'll carve my details out. So you don't want to breathe this stuff. You want to have it blowing away from you. If you have a bunch on your shop floor like I do, you don't bring a broom to sweep it up. And you don't use your shop vac because shop vac filters are not small enough to suck all this out. So all you do is put all this back in here. It's best to take a wet mop, wet rag, something like that. And because over a period of time, it will cause you problems. And it's like black lung disease or something like that. So it's not a nice deal. So there is a hazard to soapstone. But I've been doing it for several years now, and I try to make sure that the fans are blowing everything that away or whatever. When I cut or sand on the power sander, then wear a mask or something like that because there's a lot of dust in the air. So soapstone is if you're just carving it, just don't get down like this, you know, and just be aware of that. So there's masks up here that if you want to wear them, it's fine. Pewter. It's lead free, so if you want to eat on it, go ahead. You're welcome to. When it comes time to melt it, pewter melts anywhere from 425 degrees to 525 degrees, depending on the makeup of the pewter. This R98 melts around 425 degrees, so that's hot. You usually have an open flame, which we're going to do all the pouring stuff outside of. Pewter molds they'll leak. Your clamp won't hold right, and it'll run all over. The pewter's just like, it just runs everywhere. Or you'll shake and spill the ladle or something, and it'll splatter. And if you're using plaster, and the plaster's wet, and it causes steam to explode, then it just really goes crazy. You know, then it's fireworks. You don't want to wear open-toe shoes when pouring, if possible. I know I didn't tell you all this ahead of time. You just keep your toes on the table, way on the table. I've done that. I've worn flip-flops and I burn my toes because stuff run off. Most of the time, pewter hits you on the skin, it's going to burn, but it'll flip right off. It cools so quick, so you just knock it off, and you're still going to have a pretty good burn at 400 degrees. You can wear safety glasses if you want. I've got a pair or two around here if you pour. I've never had any problem. If you pour, and I'll show you all how to pour. There's certain techniques of pouring. And so you want to be aware of that. Pewter's hot. This piece right here coming out of the mold, laying on the table, looks just like that. Only it's 400 degrees. But it looks just like that. So the biggest common mistake is, as soon as it comes out of the mold, reach down and pick it up without a pair of gloves on. And I guarantee you've done burnt your fingers. And you'll do that. Experience. I've done it. I do it cleaning. I pour so many of these so quick that I'll pour 30 of them and then let my stone cool down, and I'll reach right around and start breaking screws off. And I pick up the hotness first usually. So pewter laying on the table, regardless, if you want to be careful, make sure it's cool before you pick it up. Pewter out of stone is definitely hot. So it looks the same, remember. If it's hot or not, it'll look the same. The stones are going to be hot. They're going to get hot. They retain heat. We have welding gloves. These here. I pour and clip, and they can attest to this. We've got a way we pour. We call it speed pouring, splash pouring. And what we'll do is we'll take and I don't use clamps. I brought a few clamps for stones for y'all, but I don't use clamps. I use my hands most of the time with my glove on. There's actually two gloves. There's another glove inside this glove because the stone gets so hot the way we pour. Because you're pouring 500 tokens. I'll sit there and call it, you know, speed pouring, splash pouring, or whatever. I'll pour it in there. The token's really small. Most of the time it's already set. I'll pour the rest of the sprue out and then drop the token. Pour it again. That's how fast it goes. I mean, that's the only way you've seen them set like this, and you may have seen set with clamp on them, and you pour one, then you got to let it set, do all that. When you're pouring 500 tokens, you don't have that luxury. So we try to pour as quick as possible, and that's why we want to make sure that they pour good when we get there. So gloves are definitely essential to have. What else, bud? Safety hazard.
Venting, but that's a minor concern.
It's what?
Sometimes it'll squirt out your vents, but you already covered it, just squirt out different places. Hot metal, breathing, safety goggles, fire. I think you covered it.
We like flaming fire. The only other thing would be is the tools you use. Some of them are sharp, really sharp. I use darning needles and dental tools for almost all of my stuff. This is my personal little box here too, by the way. These are some of the tools that I use on a daily basis. And all they are dental tools. You pick them up at Harbor Freight. They're really cheap. Did you get any of those?
They don't care.
I didn't hear it either. He suggested maybe try it online. I found some on Amazon. What is it?
This here is a sanding stick. It's fiberglass down here. And I discovered this by accident because I was wanting something to smooth this out in here and everything. So I seen these and said, oh, that sounds like that might work. So I took it, and for smoothing off your cut marks,
I get it. There's not much that works better than those things.
it works great. And if you can find these, you want to buy you 2 or 3 of them. If you find them, send me an email, let me know, because I'm probably going to buy a dozen or more, just for the fact that.
I found them on Amazon, and I found them in different sizes on Amazon with refills.
Cool. I like that.
Like that?
I would like that. These are a lifesaver. If you're doing details and you get a detail in there that you really don't like or something, you can take and actually trim these off, fibers off a little bit. You want to be careful because they're fiberglass and they stick once they get in it. But you can take it to get that small detail erased to start all over again, or to add some technique to it. Common tools, we'll go over that before we start. Screwdriver. I do bone carvings too, and so this has got a little, I don't know if you can see that or not, it's got a little line in there. Another a bone needle that I use. This here is just a pipe fitting that I had to use to make circles. You can make little circles with it. I mean, anything that you can think of that it'll cut it. One of the other things that I like for details, you get this today's hardware, if I can get it out. These are little roll pins, and that's the same thing for making little bitty bumps, which makes a depression. Remember, you're carving in reverse. I don't know if you can see that, that's not very much. This is strapping tape that you can find on pallets and stuff. This is real good for if you're going to smooth out a place. You can cut this to different sizes to do that with. The other thing is these wood carving tools. And you're going to see a whole bunch over here that you're welcome to use. But I get wood carving tools, and I cut them on a grinder or with a file to the shape that I want. This one here was a V shape, another V shape. So you make your own tools. The tools to avoid, unless you really want to try to use them, are these dental picks you get at Hobby Lobby. They're really sharp. The sharper the point is, they'll catch on the soapstone, and you'll pull chunks out of it. So if you're doing really fine detail work, you don't want to use one of these because they will. They'll catch, and I end up sticking myself in the finger and everything else with them. So if you want to try them, they're over here.
They seem to have, because the needle on it, they're so thin and so long, they kind of dance around and bounce on the stone instead of getting in there too. They're just no good.
So if you're going to use a needle, and that's what I've got over here for y'all to use, these are garning needles. If you'll find out that they're sharp, but they're not sharp like a needle. They don't have that really sharp. They will stick you. Dowel rod, will drill a hole in it and just stuck a needle in it. And these all come from Walmart this morning because I didn't have these. It'll work.
Is it too sharp or no?
If it's too sharp, dull it.
Okay. How many waffles?
And all.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing all my secrets with you. One of the things that I found that works really great now, and I just stumbled across this. I don't use Dremel tools because Dremel tools eat something so quick. It'll cut your detail out before you know it. You're going to slip. When you do, it's going to put a scratch all the way across. It's going to be deep. So detail, a Dremel tool, and I bought one for this purpose too. Here, I can draw with this one, or I can trace with this one. You know, because I bought it for that. It's just like a pen. But one slip, and it just takes out everything. But what I did find out was that I take this little pin vise, and some of you got this. You can buy this at Hobby Freight too. It's back in the welding section. It's a tip cleaner. They'll have little bitty drill bits in them, and but it makes an excellent pencil to draw with, or like I said, you can use the deal. But my latest secret is that I like, and it's secret to me anyway, is dental bits. I went to my dentist and I said, hey, Doc, you got any old dental bits that you're not using anymore? Oh yeah, I got a whole bunch back here. What are you using them for? And at the time I was going to use them in a Dremel tool. And so he brought me all these dental bits out, and there's all different shapes and stuff. And the other day, I put one in one of my pens, and I love it. So if you get some dental bits and put them in your pen, because they come with different size heads on them, you know, for drilling, so your lines can be thicker or thinner as you want. Other with just a garning needle, it's going to be that thick. So that's my latest thing. I really like that. Another thing for smoothing out circles and stuff. Just a piece of glass. Buy this at Hobby Lobby. Just a little square glass. It works really great in a circle or something, and it's straight. So you're going to come out with a smooth section there. Something else to use is, this is an old wood bit that I cut the tip off of it. I didn't really sharpen it or anything, so, you know, it was the size I needed. It's the same way. As you see, it will cut the soapstone in a hurry. That. You make your own tools. There's no reason to go buy them. Get brass rod like this or copper rod. I just flattened these out with a hammer. It took a file and made it the way I wanted it. I wanted a round groove. It's the same over this one here. There's another one.
Is that the one with the nail with?
I don't know what it said. I've got one that I took like this, and I took a groove and it's straight across, and I took a small file, which I gotta tell this story. There's this lady at Palantir Glass and Metal when I was up there 2 years ago. I was teaching a class on needlework, and she said, oh, she had a bunch of needle files. And now she finally knew what they were for, was to make needles. And I said, I didn't have the heart to tell her, so no, they're needle files because they're really small files, and that's it, you know, it's not that you can make needles with. But anyway, what I did was take these needle files, I found one that was like a V shape, like that one, and I cut little grooves in here, like that, and that way when I drew it on soapstone, I had lines that were equally apart, and I drew a round square like that. So, you make your own tools, make whatever design that you need. If you have something special, a half crescent or something like that, you can make your own tools, and you can't buy them, they're not out there, so you have to make them. So it's carving. On your block of soapstone, you want to try to leave the 1/3 open for the sprue. Let's use this one here. That's not quite 1/3. Not quite 1/3. But you want to leave that open for the sprue. And that way, this is how you're going to get your hot metal in there. The second thing you want to do is try to leave a 1/4 inch around all the edge, at least a 1/4 inch, and that's just to keep it from blowing through, because a lot of times you might scratch it or drop it, because I've dropped some of these, and undercuts. Undercuts are your worst enemy. An undercut is when you cut back in. You cut back in. And so when you pour hot metal into it, it will not come out. And if you do get it out, it's going to break your stone. So what I do is I try to bevel all my outside edges and all my inside details to where it's a bevel out. If it's in, the metal's going to hang and you're going to break that stone. If it's out, it'll fall out most of the time. So just think about that. And
Excuse me, I'm not standing.
that's fine. What you want to try on your designs, you want to try to make sure and not have this, because your feeder's going to have to go in, turn around, and come up here. Okay? And if you got a good made together, then the air won't escape, and it'll be an air bubble here. And you won't be able to, it won't fill with you. So you want to be careful how you do that. And you see we've got vent lines. I've got this is a good example here. I've got another one somewhere.
So on your illustration, would it have been better to put the screw on the other side, where the vent lines are, or even on the corner?
You still have these corners up here. That's why I said you got to look at your piece to make sure that it works out all right. Okay. This piece here. This piece here, you see these little indentions right here. That's places for the air to go. You should see inside the center here. This is the piece. As you see here, and I'll bring it over there. As you see, this part here is not poured up here. So we had to have a place for the air to go from here. It's either going to have to go out the bottom or out the top. As you can see, it was poured in the bottom. So I put these little holes here that doesn't do anything because they're all, it's going to come out vacant. But it's so the air can go into those little pockets. And that way, it'll pour. Because I poured this thing, and I poured this thing, and I poured this thing. And I couldn't get that metal to pour the way I wanted to. I just kept on and on and on. And finally I decided, well, I'm going to put some little holes here for air to go to. And it was just enough that it worked. You see the vent lines? You see the little scratch lines? You go ahead and pass that one around. Find another. You see the little scratch lines? As these blocks come around, you see the little scratch lines on them? It's like man, you just lift and it's sliding off the side. Those are vent lines. And a lot of times you do that. And you see on period stones where there's a lot of them, you got to take little lines off them. And that's just so the air can go out.